This is the Chris Stigall Show podcast.
Okay, guys, let's just rip. And Chris Stigall.
Chris Stigall. Chris, thanks for being with me tonight.
Chris Stigall.
I'm joined now by Chris Stigall.
Now, he puts the broad in broadband. It's Chris Stigall.
The Chris Stigall podcast is presented by usmedicalplan.com. Save big money monthly and get better health coverage at usmedicalplan.com.
It's Thursday, the second day of March, and I thank you so much for downloading the Chris Stigall Show podcast. I welcome you in if you are a harumper in particular. If you saw, I recorded a little bit of a video yesterday from the hotel room. Hello, ladies. Because we weren't set up here on Media Row yet, so I wasn't able to send you the Harump Society and my message from CPAC any other way. So I did a creepy, weird hotel room recording, which as I said at the Harump Society, I've always thought it weird when people do hotel room hits on cable news. It always looks like either you're about to watch something inappropriate or someone's been abducted. Either way, it just looks very strange. But anyway, thanks to those of you who have said hello and checked in at the Harump Society. We've had a great run here in day one at CPAC, and we're going to have some fantastic interviews for you today. I think you're going to enjoy it. Matt and Mercedes Schlapp, who are basically the king and queen of CPAC, if you will. We kind of go through some of the issues, who they expect to speak, some of the things that will be coming up for the people here who are here in attendance and who will be speaking in breakout groups. Donald Trump is coming to speak. Interestingly, Ron DeSantis is not coming to speak, and we kind of get into why that is, why maybe he didn't make the trip. Also yesterday, some tremendous fireworks, if that's what you want to call them, but really I would just call it accountability on display. Senator Hawley of Missouri, Senator Cruz, Senator Lee, Senator Kennedy, absolutely lights out dynamite stuff from these guys, holding Merrick Garland, that little twerpy bowling alley waitress sounding gnome, holding him accountable yesterday. We have the audio coming up. So that's just some of it. Of course, you're going to hear over today and tomorrow some fantastic interviews. And we've got people like Sean Spicer and Tony Schaefer and Amber Athey, some great thinkers in the space of just a host of issues. Hons Van Spakofsky on election integrity. Some of our favorite conservatives. The crowd is really building up. Gordon Chang, I just see standing by. So we've got a great show for you, and I appreciate you downloading it. And the guy that makes it possible for us each and every day is a guy called John Ruhlman. John Ruhlman's at usmedicalplan.com. Now, if you buy your own health insurance, this is something I need you to know. You're paying way too much for it. I almost guarantee you're paying way too much for your own health insurance. So if you buy it for your family, if you buy it for yourself, if you're a retired senior and you're on a fixed income and it's killing you, that monthly premium, go to usmedicalplan.com right now or call 877-410-4321. 877-410-4321. Either way, just give John like 2 minutes of your time or his team and tell them what you're paying in monthly premiums for your health insurance. Because here's what I'll promise. 80 different insurers in their network, they're going to find a plan that is as good or better and will cost you less money. It's that simple, and it's just going to take a couple of minutes. Plus, they've got an entire care department to help you navigate all the bureaucracy of insurance. John Ruhlman, U.S. Benefits Group, is the specific website is usmedicalplan.com or 877-410-4321. We're on Media Row, ladies and gentlemen, and what does that mean, Fast Eddie, when we're on Media Row? That means that everyone in Media Row is up in a very cavernous Gaylord Hotel, and when it's empty and it's just hosts lined up next to one another, you basically are going to get to hear 2 or 3 shows all at one time. That's what that means.
Sounds good to me, Chris. Oh, my gosh. Welcome.
So we're flanked by Washington, D.C. to the left. We're flanked by Indianapolis on the right. And now we await. We await for the hall to pack up and get going for the day, which this is just day one. We're chock-a-block with folks today. I'm very excited to actually have Guy Shiraki, one of our friends, stopping by physically here at Radio Row today, because Guy has, I think, the prescription, or at least he has seen, maybe he's actively trying to figure out the prescription. I don't want to put words in his mouth, but I think he is trying earnestly to figure out a way forward for suburban Philadelphia and suburban Pennsylvania. How do Republicans reclaim that? There's going to be a lot of conversation about that at CPAC here. And so Guy's going to bring a lot of perspective here live from Radio Row. Our pal Rob O'Donnell, a great law enforcement official who also happens to have his own radio show in the Scranton area now. He'll be here today. Curtis Houck from NewsBusters will be here today. And that's just who we know. There will be many more that we don't know, but anxious to get underway here. So while we're at it and talking about the swamp, yesterday some activity actually happened, some positive activity happened yesterday, extraordinarily satisfying, and I believe we've got it today. We've got the guys moving furniture. It's just loud, and people are collapsing. But fascinating. Let's just go through yesterday, the Merrick Garland hearing, the bowling alley waitress before the United States Senate. I mean, it was a tour de force from Mike Lee, Ted Cruz, Josh Hawley. A lot of this yesterday centered around our buddy Mark Houck, who we've had on the show here recently. Mark, the Bucks County father, who was rousted from his home in the dark early morning hour, about now, pulled from his home in leg irons at gunpoint, dozens of agents, kids screaming, and he said, listen, not only has a local prosecutor dropped this, I've been more than willing to surrender myself for some time, and this all surrounds a case of a guy standing in front of an abortion clinic, peacefully protesting as he has for years and years. It sounds to me as though the senators are starting to zero in on the fact that Merrick Garland is just anti-Catholic. I don't know Merrick Garland's background. I don't know his theology, but it sounds to me like he's just a Catholic hater, maybe a Christian hater. Who knows? But Mark Houck basically is guilty of just being a faithful Christian, is the way I think most of us are starting to zero in on this conversation. And this the issue for these senators, and Josh Hawley in particular, who I think is Catholic, and he's white hot about it, is what is the animus here, really? What is it? Is it directed at Catholics? Let's take a listen to some of this yesterday.
Does your department have a problem with anti-Catholic bias?
Our department protects all religions and all ideologies. It does not have any bias against any religion of any kind.
Well, you could have surprised me, because given the resources that you are expending and the apparently intelligence assets that you are deploying against Catholics, it appears, and other people of faith, while simultaneously turning a blind eye while people are executed gang style on the streets of our cities, including in my home state, your answer frankly surprises me. Let's talk about the Mark Houck case, for example. You've been asked about this already today, and frankly, your answers really astound me. This is a case where a Catholic pro-life demonstrator, father, was accused of disorderly conduct in front of an abortion center. The local prosecutor, the Philadelphia district attorney, who is a Democrat, a liberal, very progressive, declined to prosecute. There was a private suit that got dismissed. And then after all of that, your Justice Department sent between 20 and 30 armed agents in the early morning hours to the Houck's private residence to arrest this guy after he had offered to turn himself in voluntarily. Here's the photo. Once again, you can see the long guns, you can see the ballistic shields, you can see that they're wearing bulletproof vests. Why did the Justice Department do this? Why did you send 20 to 30 SWAT-style agents and a SWAT-style team to this guy's house when everybody else had declined to prosecute and he'd offered to turn himself in?
Determinations of how to make arrests under arrest warrants are made based by the tactical operators in the district. They are not.
But you surely looked into it by this point, right? You know the answer, surely.
All I know is what the FBI has said, which is that they made decisions on the ground as to what was safest and easiest. So they do not agree with your description of what happened on the scene.
You don't agree with my description. I'm pointing out what the photo is. There are agents here who have long guns and ballistic shields. Let's take a look at the hardened criminals that your Justice Department sent these armed agents to go terrorize on that morning. Here they are. Here they are at Mass. Here's the 7 children with Mr. Houck and his wife. In this early morning, they were all at home. Mrs. Houck has said repeatedly the children were screaming. They feared for their lives. You got these agents demanding that he come out. They've got the guns, she said, pointing at the house and at them. He has offered to turn himself in. And this is who you go to terrorize. What's really interesting to me is this seems to directly contradict your own memorandum about the use of force at the Justice Department. You say officers may use only the force that is objectively reasonable to effectively control an incident. Are you telling me that in your opinion as Attorney General, it was objectively necessary to use 20 or 30 SWAT-style agents with long guns and ballistic shields for these people?
What I'm saying is that decisions about how to go about this were made on the ground by FBI agents.
So you're saying you don't know?
I'm saying what I just said.
Which is that you're abdicating responsibility?
I'm not abdicating responsibility.
Then give me the answer. Do you think, in your opinion, you are the Attorney General of the United States? You are in charge of the Justice Department. And yes, sir, you are responsible. Yeah. So give me an answer.
Oh, I mean, is there anything more satisfying? I could sit and listen to Josh Hawley as my ringtone today. That's what we're talking about. Finally. Doesn't that feel satisfying? Have you heard anything more satisfying, Fast Eddie?
Oh my gosh! As a Catholic, as someone who is friends with someone who's very good friends with Mark Houck, this is just—it's beautiful. It's an art form that I wish I had. Josh Hawley, thank you.
No, he's tremendous, and he wasn't alone. He had his colleagues, Mike Lee and Ted Cruz, got into the act as well.
I am answering.
Has the Department of Justice enforced this statute? Have you brought a single case against any of these protesters threatening the justices under 18 U.S.C. Section 1507? Have you brought even one?
Senator, you asked me whether I sat on my hands, and quite the opposite. I sent 70 United States Marshals.
Let me try again.
To defend.
Has the Department of Justice brought even a single case under this statute? It's a yes/no question. It's not a give a speech on the other things you did.
The job of the United States Marshals is to defend the lives.
So the answer is no.
Is to defend the lives of the justices, and that's their number one priority. They have.
Why are you unwilling to say no? The answer is no. You know it's no. I know it's no. Everyone in this hearing room knows it's no. You're not willing to answer a question. Have you brought a case under this statute? Yes or no?
As far as I know, we haven't. And what we have done is defended the lives of the justices with over 70 U.S. Marshals.
How do you decide which criminal statutes the DOJ enforces and which one it doesn't?
The United States Marshals know that they have full authority.
I recognize you want to give a separate speech.
No, I don't want to.
How do you decide which statutes you enforce and which ones you don't?
The Marshals on scene make that determination in light of the priority of defense.
The Marshals do not make a determination over whether to prosecute. You, the Attorney General, make a determination, and you spent 20 years as a judge, and you're perfectly content with justices being afraid for their children's lives, and you did nothing to prosecute it. Let's shift to another area.
Can I answer the question?
No, you cannot. You have refused to answer the question.
I am answering your question. The Attorney General does not decide whether to arrest.
How did you choose not to enforce this statute?
The Marshals on scene.
Marshals don't make that decision.
They do make the decision of whether to make an arrest.
Prosecute someone? No, they don't.
If they make
Marshals do not have prosecution.
If they make an arrest, then it goes to the Marshals.
Let's change topics.
I think he got the best of the bowling alley waitress, didn't he? Wasn't that fantastic? I could listen to it all day. Mike Lee teed it up next.
A SWAT team of about 25 came to my house with about 15 vehicles and started pounding on the door, and then had about 5 guns pointed at my husband, myself, and basically my kids. This concerns me. Mr. Houck ended up facing these charges, and not surprisingly, the jury acquitted him of that. I'm just wondering how it doesn't seem justifiable to me to have that overwhelming show of force for conduct like that. In the meantime, in 2022 and for the first couple of months of 2023, DOJ has announced charges against 34 individuals for blocking access to or vandalizing abortion clinics. And there have been over 81 reported attacks on pregnancy centers, 130 attacks on Catholic churches since the leak of the Dobbs decision, and only 2 individuals have been charged. So how do you explain this disparity by reference to anything other than politicization of what's happening there?
The FACE Act applies equally to efforts to damage, blockade clinics, whether whether they are a pregnancy resource center or whether they are an abortion center. It applies equally in both cases, and we apply the law equally. I will say you are quite right. There are many more prosecutions with respect to the blocking of the abortion centers, but that is generally because those actions are taken with photography at the time, during the daylight, and seeing the person who did it is quite easy. Those who are attacking the pregnancy resources centers, which is a horrid thing to do, are doing this at night in the dark. We have put full resources on this. We have put rewards out for this. The Justice Department and the FBI have made outreach to Catholic and other organizations to ask for their help in identifying the people who are doing this. We will prosecute every case against a pregnancy resource center that we can make. But these people who are doing this are clever and are doing it in secret. And I'm convinced that the FBI is trying to find them with urgency.
What a loathsome little toad. Isn't he just a loathsome creature? He can barely articulate what he doesn't even quite know how to define what's happened. We've been reaching out to you religious Jesus people. I would love to know the theology of Merrick Garland. Just out of curiosity. You suppose he's a churchgoer? You suppose he's a regular worshiper of any kind? I don't even care what. Do you think the guy has any kind of theology to which he adheres? He doesn't talk like a guy who does. You can always hear it in people who are not, I don't care what faith you are, but you can hear people who are of no faith, who have zero, if even puddle deep theology personally in their lives, because they don't know how it can. I mean, Josh Hawley is thundering. Ted Cruz is thundering, and these guys are thundering because they feel it deep in their core. Merrick Garland does not understand at its core why this is so offensive. And you can tell because he can't even explain who he's pretending to defend. Nevertheless, these guys weren't it. Senator John Kennedy also took a swing.
Didn't you understand the chilling effect that it would have to parents when you issued your directive, when you directed your criminal divisions and your counterterrorism divisions to investigate parents who are angry at school boards and administrators during COVID?
So, Senator, if you just give me a moment to put the full context, I did not do that. I did not issue any memorandum directing the investigation of parents who are concerned about their children. Quite to the contrary, the memorandum that you're talking about says at the very beginning of the memorandum that vigorous public debate is protected by the First Amendment. And the kind of concerns that you're talking about are, as expressed by parents, are, of course, completely protected. The memorandum was aimed at violence and threats of violence against a whole host of school personnel. It was not aimed at parents making complaints to their school board. And it came in the context of a whole series of other kinds of violent threats and violence against other public officials.
Right. So that's just some of it yesterday, just a tour de force by these senators. It really was extraordinarily satisfying to see this little pipsqueak dragged before them to answer for this. I'm so glad to hear that Jason Perrette, who just reached out to me, he is a financial advisor at Eagle Wealth Planning, who has a passion for providing financial services to those who are looking to pursue financial independence. Jason reached out to me yesterday. He said people are starting to check in with him. As a friend of mine of many years who is... well, he's a fiduciary by trade and by training, so what does that mean exactly? As a financial advisor at Eagle Wealth Planning, very simply, that means he's not out hawking products to make commissions. He is sincerely, genuinely providing financial services to those who are looking to pursue independence by setting a mission for yourself financially and staying on track. You want someone in financial planning for you that's constantly evaluating where you are and if you're meeting your goals and how risk averse you are. He's always calculating those things and checking in. How you doing? Here's what this looks like. What do you think? Maybe we should take a look like. And he's patient. He's very patient. So I have to say that if you have a financial goal and you're not entirely sure how to reach it, or maybe you're young and you have no financial planner whatsoever, or maybe you're an entrepreneur or you're retired and you have your money, but you're just not entirely sure that the people that are managing it for you at present are doing best for you, I want you to meet my friend Jason Perrett. I want you to call Eagle Wealth Planning today. He's linked on my website. If you go to chrisstigall.com, you'll see the link right there. And anywhere in the country, wherever you listen to this podcast, you call Jason. He's ready to talk to you today about how to get your long-term financial independence on track. 816-394-8117. 816-394-8117. Jason Perrett, again, is his name. Financial advisor at Eagle Wealth Planning. You can email him at jason@eaglewealthplanning.com. Or, as I said, go to my website and click on the logo there at Eagle Wealth Planning, and it'll take you right there. Eagle Wealth Planning, securities and advisory services offered through Cetera Advisors, LLC, member FINRA SIPC, a broker-dealer, and a registered investment advisor. Cetera is under separate ownership from any other named entity. We're sitting here on Media Row with the people responsible for the whole shooting match, ladies and gentlemen. Matt and Mercedes Schlapp are with us live this morning. Hi, guys.
Chris, great to be with you again.
Great to be with you.
Good morning.
You're both doing all right today?
Well, we haven't had coffee, but beyond that, we're pretty good.
I haven't either, so I'll let you know.
We'll bring you the coffee.
We're all a little numb.
I know we are, but we're excited. Look, I think you're going to start to see the energy really grow here at CPAC. We were in an activism training yesterday with over 400 people. It was sponsored by the Leadership Institute. It's a mix of folks from every single age group just wanting to say, how can I make a difference in my community? How can we win these elections? How do I even run for office? I mean, it's those basic components that I think are very fundamental, especially during CPAC.
Matt, last time you were on the show, we were talking about the fact that you guys have now an international interest. People come to this event and they study CPAC. What is the interest internationally, do you think?
I think we're fighting the same battles. They get CNN International almost exclusively in these countries. That's how they hear what's going on in the country. And then all of a sudden this guy, Donald Trump, came around and he pierced through the bubble and they're like, wait. It sounds like America's a different kind of place than we thought. They have all this teaching of gender confusion at the tiniest of ages in their schools. We learned about that in Brazil. We didn't learn about it here. It's all the same battles. Obviously, China's a huge problem when we go to Japan and to Korea, and we protested in Hong Kong with those brave young students. It was like really understanding like what a menace China is. And we've been sold this bill of goods that China, they were just friendly communists that wanted to make a few dollars, and so they'd be, good partners. And it was all a lie.
I do want to add that in Brazil, one of my favorite stories is that everyone was talking Portuguese and you hear blah, 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 blah. And then all of a sudden they go, fake news. And everyone jumps up from their chairs. And you're like, they have the fake news problem.
Wow.
They want to take down anyone who is conservative and trying to run for office. It sounds just like an American story right now. What we're seeing with the leftist press, their goal is a search and destroy mission of anyone, of any organization that's effective in this conservative space. And at the end of the day, they battle for their freedoms, for their individual freedoms, for the protection of their family, and for the protection of their faith and their country.
And you've seen this when you travel. I know you have, and I don't. Maybe I sound like a homer or a shill. I don't mean to. I'm just saying what's true. Donald Trump seems to represent something internationally to people. They get excited about him. They see something exciting about him, don't they?
Yeah, that's exactly right. And, when we went to Japan, there were a whole group of women, and it was the first year I had gone to Tokyo, and they had these red hats on. And I was like, what are those? They can't be MAGA hats. And they were Make America Great Again. I thought I was going to say Make Japan Great Again. It said Make America Great Again. So the interpreter, I said, hey, ladies, why doesn't it say Japan on your hat? And they're like, because for the first time you have a president who understands our enemy is China. And he really connected to people overseas. Like, I don't think people understand. We're told by the media that, like, JFK was the person, and maybe he did connect overseas, but the person who connects overseas is Donald Trump, because they know they're being lied to in the schools. They know they're being lied to by the big corporations. They know they're being lied to on the TV and in media, and they're tired of it. They're smarter than than the propaganda they're being fed.
Matt and Mercedes Schlapp with us here. We're live at CPAC. What is the movement issue, do you think, right now? Is it education still? Is that the thing that has maybe turned the burner up on the country?
I'd be curious to hear what Matt thinks. I think it's a mix of people cannot afford to buy groceries. People
Inflation.
cannot afford to get, gas. I think that inflation is a huge issue. As much as they try to paint this rosy economic picture once in a while, the reality is that life is becoming unaffordable for many Americans. I do think the education issue, especially for those suburban parents, is a big issue. I think the idea that they feel that they send their boy to school and the boy comes back and says, no, I'm a she, her.
Yeah.
Come on. That's outrageous. There's no place for this in the school system. They got to learn the basics and not have to deal with all this gender ideology, the puberty blockers, the transgender agenda really infiltrating our children's lives. And I think, I think China remains a big issue as well. That big adversary here in the United States.
We're going to have our straw poll. And the great thing about CPAC is my opinion matters very little, because we're going to ask all the thousands of people that assemble here over the next 3 days, and they're going to vote on the issues that matter. And to me, I think Mercy's right. The bread and butter issues of the destruction of the Biden economy is front and center in everyone's head. Every time you fill your car up with gas, you feel it. But I think underneath this, there's this war on America that we've been raging for years, and this whole woke war and everything else. I get the sense that corporate America is waking up to the fact that they just went way too far.
Yes.
And I also think this whole thing with parents and their kids, if you have a troubled kid and you go to get counseling for that kid, try to find an appointment. It's almost impossible to get, because after COVID, these counselors are just the busiest people in the world. But also check it out, because their goal in all these things is to separate the minor child from the parent.
Yes.
They want to get between you, and it's still happening in schools. You would think in the Commonwealth of Virginia this all would have stopped. We have headlines every day of this insanity continues. Parents need to get out of the way. Give us your children. We'll raise them. They'll be gender fluid. They'll have purple hair. They'll have Che Guevara T-shirts, and then they'll be healthy. And it's
I'm
insane.
not against the purple hair, quite frankly, but yeah.
You're not what?
I'm not against the purple hair.
Really? Would you do purple hair?
No, you'd look
Maybe
stunning.
in my old age I might do that.
You look stunning.
Thank you.
You guys have young girls, and the culture, I do too. I have teenage kids. It feels like every day, and I didn't, as a younger man, didn't think, maybe I didn't buy into the culture war argument as much. I do now. Maybe it's because I'm older, I'm a parent, I don't know, but it just feels like culturally they want our kids in such an aggressive way, like I've never felt before. Or is that just a parent?
I feel like I'm wearing a shield the whole time with a sword, and I'm like, stay away, don't turn this. You feel the outside world trying to impact your child's mind.
Yes.
Even through Disney, even
yes.
through the places
Nothing's
where
off
you
limits.
would, nothing's off limits.
Nothing.
And that, I think, is where parents are just, they've had it.
Yeah.
They've had it. And especially when it comes to the schools, where we know that this issue has been really, I think, just toxic for our children, and why parents are like, I need other choices. I can't keep going down this path.
People ask me when these sessions happen over the course of a couple of days, what the different kind of breakout groups, people that aren't here and go into the ballroom, what kind of things are discussed inside CPAC for people that don't attend?
You mean like on the main stage?
Yeah. What kind of
everything?
Everything.
And here's the greatest thing about it, which is whether it's taxes, pro-life, the Second Amendment, fighting China, whatever the topic is, we invite these 150 speakers, and we give topic areas, but they do whatever they want.
You just let them
go. We
go.
never ask
There's
for
no
a speech. I never censor anything. We don't look at things to make sure they're going to be careful. Sometimes we'll have speech topics, and the people on those panels will go in a whole different direction. It is freedom, baby.
That's awesome.
And it's a live show.
And then, of course, you got people like, I know, is he your keynote? Do you call him your keynote, Donald Trump, or no?
No, we don't, because that word is like riddled with controversy.
That sounds like you're endorsing or something.
Yeah, so basically, he's a featured speaker, I'd say that. We have a very special relationship with Donald Trump. For Mercy and I, he's been a friend, a boss, a mentor, and a big CPAC supporter. But he's running for president. We're going to be fair about this. We got two other candidates, Vivek
Ramaswamy.
I haven't had my coffee.
No, it's hard.
Ramaswamy,
Who's
and we
very
have
charismatic,
Nikki
and
Haley.
Nikki Haley.
and they're announced, and they're here. We have others who are thinking about running, like Mike Pompeo and others, and we're going to be fair. We're giving them all a good amount of time. They're all going to be in the straw poll. And
all right, did DeSantis say yay or nay? Was that a no-go?
We thought he was coming. He's spoken many times. He has a great record with us. His CPAC score when he was in the House of Representatives was near perfect.
Yeah.
What a great governor he's been. We really thought he was coming. He spoke at the previous CPACs that we had in Florida, and he decided not to come, and we think it's a missed opportunity.
Does he feel like he's not on friendly turf?
I think people really like him here. I do.
Too.
I don't. You got to. I think you go back to the fact that with DeSantis, this is where the heart of the movement is here at CPAC, and I do think that for DeSantis to say, "Okay, I'm going to go hang out with donors," I just think it doesn't send the right message, and I think from a politically. It would have made sense for him to come here, but at the same time, well, we don't. He's got to make his own decisions, and we wish him well.
I'm really surprised about that. I know you got to run. Let me ask you last about: did you see Merrick Garland before people like Josh Hawley? And I don't know. You've been busy, I know, but Merrick Garland goes and testifies yesterday about the raid on Mark Houck in Bucks County, Pennsylvania.
Oh, yes,
the Catholic father. They rip him from his home in the middle of the morning, early morning hours. This is the first time that I think a lot of Americans have seen at least some members of Congress really blister Merrick Garland, who maybe is the most loathsome creature to me as a conservative in all of government right now.
And I saw Mike Lee asked him a question about they're now going back and they're going to retry everyone who got commutations from Donald Trump. And they're starting with one man and they're going to go through the list. It's like they're trying to wipe Donald Trump from the history books. They're trying to make it seem like he was an illegitimate president. Hillary Clinton said he was an illegitimate president. They lied about Russian collusion, blah, blah, blah. But this is evil. The Constitution was a document we used to all be able to take stock in, and we could change it when times change through the amendment process. And now the Democrats simply don't believe in it. And the idea that you would go back and try people who got a pardon or a commutation is just outrageous. Those are victims of the process.
Or in this case with Mark, the abuse of the law of FBI, the weaponization of the DOJ. There are huge abuses that at least
IRS.
we keep learning about, which is, I think, impacting just everyday Americans. It's not just going after political types; it's also going after everyday Americans.
The DOJ is scary. Can
scary.
I just say?
They're scary.
They scare me.
And FBI is.
They want to scare you. It's all intentional. They're trying to intimidate conservatives and patriots in this country into backing down, into backing off their beliefs. You're not allowed to have complete religious freedom. You're not allowed to own that many guns. You're not allowed to teach your kids to read the Bible and have traditional values. You're not allowed to do this. And if you keep doing it, and if you keep talking about election fraud, you will end up in prison. And that is their message. And we all can feel it because everyone knows somebody now who's under their thumb.
Matt and Mercedes Schlapp, live from CPAC today. I know you guys are swamped, so thank you for stopping here today first. We appreciate it.
Thanks for being at CPAC.
Excellence in dentistry. That's what you're going to get at Williamsburg Dental. My friend Bob Spinato is back on the phone. He's in Broomall, just off the Blue Route. And with 2 new associates, now you can expand and offer more hours, maybe evening hours, possibly weekends, Bob.
Yeah, one of the things that I told them from early on when they started with me was the value of not only their own time, but other people's times. And they run on a similar schedule that I do. If you've got a 1 o'clock appointment, you're in their chair at 1 o'clock. And it's something that across the board at Williamsburg Dental, we really pride ourselves on, whether it's an appointment with the hygienist or whether it's an appointment with one of our doctors. The other thing is we now have some expanded hours in the evenings, and even there's some discussion about opening again on some Saturdays for services.
Yeah, but not you. You're fishing. You're not kidding anybody. It's not you going to be working on Saturday. Come on,
Well, I'm in my 33rd year, and it should be the young guns.
That's right. You've earned it. You've earned it.
I feel like I have. Thank you.
Pick up the phone or go online, make that appointment, 610-353-2700 or williamsburg-dental.com.
Great to be with you live from CPAC and Media Row, CPAC 2023. Stay tuned all day today, and tomorrow we'll be here live. And I tell you, we meet some great people at CPAC, and we've actually spoken with our next guest before. She's written an important book. I think it is, and I told her then, and I'll say it again, I think that what we need to learn from COVID and what it did to us socially is perhaps one of the most important things that you and I will ever learn while we're alive on planet Earth. I'm serious. What this did to us culturally, what COVID did to us culturally, is I'm not sure I'll ever be able to wrap my head around it. I pray about it a lot. I think about it a lot. Stella Morabito thinks about it more than most, and she's written a book to that effect called The Weaponization of Loneliness, How Tyrants Stoke Our Fear of Isolation to Silence, Divide, and Conquer. and she's live with me on Media Row. Stella, great to meet you in person.
Oh, it's great meeting you too. Thanks for having me. This is a thrill.
The book, The Weaponization of Loneliness, I do hope everybody picks it up. Did I overhear there was interest from the Tucker Carlson people soon?
Well, yep, probably at the end of the month.
I'm glad to hear it, because this is, I really mean this from my heart. Your book, this is everything. In fact, people have said, because I talk about it so much, people say, you should write a book. I don't know how to write a book, but I'm glad that you did, because this did something to us.
Oh, absolutely. No, when you mentioned COVID, what it did is, as I had mentioned before, we've had a loneliness epidemic, headlines we'd read for years before COVID, but COVID really fast-tracked it all. And I think it should have opened a lot of eyes to, the importance of social connection, because they enforced the mandates actually enforced our separation in a way we never saw in America, ever before. And it was very destructive, and it wasn't just that it isolated us, the mandates did, but the mandates also cultivated a lot of hostility among Americans.
Yes.
And that, of course, just tears apart the social fabric.
Pitted us against one another.
Exactly.
And now when you see these studies that say, the masking didn't work, and the shots may not have been all that effective, and maybe there are some people that are so angry, and count me as one of them, but I have to keep it in check. They're so angry about the way we were mistreated. They say, no, hell no, we got to make them pay. Do you think, from a psychological point of view, are we better served to say, okay, you were overzealous, you abused us, we forgive you? Or do you think we really need to have a very serious punitive look at the way we were mistreated?
Well, there was so much damage done.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just overwhelming. You can't let it go.
No.
You absolutely can't let it go. And that whole, forgiveness thing is, I don't think it's even sincere, personally.
Yeah. Okay.
But I think there are some people who are sincere about it. Just average Americans who were taken in.
Yes.
You can just bring them into the fold of understanding and how important freedom is. But as far as those who were actually in the driver's seat for all of this, it was, horrific what was done to Americans.
Stella Morabito's book is called The Weaponization of Loneliness. Please pick it up. Our children maybe suffered worse than anyone?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely, from the isolation. And I think my book also looks at the fear of isolation as a political weapon. And I think that with all these crazy agendas that we're seeing, whether it's critical race theory or gender identity issues and pushing, the sexualization of children, or trillions of dollars in debt, wherever these crazy, insane agendas are coming from, I believe that we gave them a lot of oxygen. We actually allowed kind of a vacuum for these agendas to, rush in when we shut up about what we believe, when we self-censor because we're so fearful of being ostracized. And this happened a lot during COVID. They used this idea of, death hanging over everyone to...
I have not had the privilege of reading the book yet, but I promise that I will. I don't know how much you talk about the element of faith or spirituality, and I bring it up only to say I felt that our churches had a very important role in keeping people not fearful, and sadly, instead, so many of them bought into the fear, went right along with government mandates and edicts, and closed their doors for maybe, in some cases, years. Mm-hmm. Houses of worship just can't do that.
Oh, no,
that
absolutely not. And in fact, Angelo Codevilla, I don't know if your listeners know, but he wrote an amazing piece in July 2020 before the late Angelo Codevilla, sadly. But in July 2020, he wrote a piece called The COVID Coup. I think it was in the American Mind. And he talked exactly about that, about how houses of worship or priests, the people who were actually administered to the sick in ages past would never have considered cutting people off from that source of spiritual strength. And when you look at the attacks on family, on faith, on, friendship really and community, what you have is cutting Americans off from all those sources of strength.
Yes.
And inner strength through faith, and of course the faith, the strength that you get from strong bonds of friendship, and all of that was trashed during the COVID mandates. And we absolutely, this is really the private sphere of life through faith and family and friendship. That's really the source of our power, and that's the big target after all the other institutions that tyrants have always gone for.
I believe this is one of the most important books that you will ever get your hands on, and one of the most important topics that's ever been written about in our modern lifetime. I'm serious. It's called The Weaponization of Loneliness, How Tyrants Stoke Our Fear of Isolation to Silence, Divide, and Conquer. Stella Morabito, good luck with this book. I hope everybody gets it. I can't wait to see you on Tucker. That's a huge audience. I hope you get it.
Well, thank you so much. Appreciate it. It's great talking.
You know, I was just telling him during the break that I think the work done at NewsBusters might have revolutionized. Fast Eddie, I'm probably not speaking out of turn here. When I say the job you do, the job we all do in terms of covering politics every day and the swamp, the guys at NewsBusters have kind of revolutionized the way we do our jobs.
Chris, there is no question about it. There is nowhere I don't check anywhere first except NewsBusters.
If you don't follow NewsBusters for some reason on social media, you should. Curtis Houck is managing editor at NewsBusters. And first of all, it's great to meet you in person.
Yeah, absolutely. It's weird. I go through years and years and years of talking with people and before I actually meet them.
Yeah, I know. We have followed you and watched you online for years because you were just saying, and this blew my mind, you have followed 7 press secretaries?
Yeah, since the last year of the Obama administration, so Josh Earnest through KJP.
Talk to people who don't know NewsBusters. What your general function? What it exists to do?
Yeah, it's been around since 1987. The Media Research Center was started by Brent Bozell, Brent Baker, and Larry Gourlay, 3 guys who saw that the news media, American people weren't well served by the news media. You had 3 options: ABC, CBS, NBC, the major newspapers, and the American people, I think, had a sense with President Reagan that he was getting a raw deal from the media, but we needed to go national with it. We needed to increase the public's awareness of media bias. So we started with newsletters, and then we kind of grew now to multiple websites publishing content around the clock in English and Spanish. And we cover everything, the media from a short and long-term basis, and now we're moving into tech censorship, and a decade ago we moved into Hispanic media.
I mean, the speed with which things have changed and evolved, you guys have kept pace. That's what's so admirable. In 86, when Brent starts this thing, you're still really talking about major newspapers and a couple of networks.
Yeah.
You're not talking really about maybe CNN, but, there's no Fox really at that point.
Yeah, there's not even MSNBC yet. You
know,
a lot of these liberal blogs, you didn't have those quite yet. So the amount of outlets that we cover now is just so massive.
And what you have said your strategy it's not just about, hey, can you believe what this reporter said? Yeah. It's actually naming names. I mean, you've got to hold people accountable, and the only way you do that is say, that guy's name is Jim Smith from ABC News.
Exactly. I think it's really smart. It's just you're just going back to basic English, class in growing up.
It's journalism.
Journalism. When you're right, you want to give the reader as much information as possible. And if your who is just reporter : then really what are you doing? Are you really serving your readership? So it's all about memorizing the seating chart in the White House press briefing room that I do, so you know who's from which outlet when they're sitting there. And I was telling you off air, the point is when they ask a good question and you name them, you can just say, hey, this person asked a good question, and that should actually make you hate the media more, because it's proof that they can rub 2 brain cells together to ask a good question, that they're capable of being tough on all sides of the aisle. And then if they don't ask a good question, you can call them out and say, look at this idiot.
Yes, it's not just about highlighting the bad actors. It's also about propping up the people that are actually really doing journalism. You guys do that too.
Yeah, you can hold people accountable that way too, because so then when they ask a series of good questions, and then when they go off into some deranged territory going after President Trump or Ron DeSantis, you can just say, hey, whoa, hey, hold on a second. You had the whole picture when it came to this story, like the Biden document scandal. The media have been really tough on that. The media were actually pretty tough on Afghanistan. So then why are you just spreading lies about conservatives wanting to ban slavery in schools? Or that CRT isn't taught in schools. the facts are right in front of you, just as they were with Afghanistan and the Biden documents scandal. So I think that's really the way that I try to go about things. It may seem pro-media, but actually I think it's real, it's bare bones level, holding the media accountable, and I think that way, I'm not just saying you suck, CNN sucks.
Yeah.
I do like doing that too. But I'm also giving people examples of where, they show that they're not just some dits on TV.
Curtis Houck with us, managing editor at NewsBusters, and watching this every day, clipping these up in bite-sized clips of audio and video for people to consume. I know you probably notice it like I do, because that's all I do is watch this stuff all the time. You start to notice trends in messaging, don't you? Look, people that have real jobs and are actually doing real work out there every day, going to their place of business and raising families, they can't sit and watch this stuff like we do.
Yeah.
We're paid to do it that way. But I'm always fascinated at how you can see a narrative, like a whole media ecosystem, turn on a dime, and it's like, okay, today they've decided we're going to talk about this.
Yeah.
I don't think most people can see that the way we can, because they don't have the time, is my point.
Right. You saw that so well under Jeff Zucker at CNN, where they would set out with one or two stories that they wanted to talk about, and it would be the same thing for the first 40, 45 minutes of every single hour. Just different hosts, maybe the same correspondent at the beginning, but different panelists all saying the same thing. And then the final 15 minutes, oh, by the way, here's like 10 different stories we're going to cram in together, all of which are probably relevant to you, but we don't care.
Yes.
And then you restart it all over again. And that's just, I guess, you say it's a downside, but also it's a positive of the 24-hour news cycle, because you're able to see these narratives in real time. Whereas if you just had a 30-minute newscast, could you really see that narrative take shape in real time, that everybody's singing from the same sheet music?
Yes.
No,
you couldn't.
You couldn't.
And you will see it when, and our audiences are starting to get very sophisticated about it. They will see when the balloon becomes the story and the document story is no longer the thing. I mean, it's like a switch is flipped, and all of a sudden we went from obsessively talking documents to nothing but balloon. And by the way, I think we can walk and chew gum and do two stories at once, but it does seem sophisticated viewers and listeners notice. It's like, well, I thought we were white hot on this, and now we're over here like the other thing didn't happen.
Right, exactly. It's TikTok is one of the more recent examples that we've seen. The White House has said that we're going to try and ban this on federal devices. But hold on a second. On the morning shows, which I've been watching now, adding in the last year to my list of things that I have to do.
When do you sleep, man?
On a daily basis. I see they do these positive stories on TikTok. They're like, oh my gosh, these people that are struggling to find work, while also saying the Biden economy is in great shape, got inspiration on TikTok to not be depressed. But then they're going to do a story about, how TikTok is a national security threat. And you're like, hold on a second, what are you trying to do here? And what I've been really seeing recently, if we had like twice as many people at NewsBusters, I would do a study on this, looking at the positive stories of TikTok while they try to also say it's a national security threat. And you're like, you guys are so schizophrenic. You can't really stick to one thing at a particular time.
Yeah.
I mean, it just shows how superficial
Yes.
the news media are, too, as well.
Do you, of these 7 White House press secretaries, do you agree with me that Karine Jean-Pierre is the absolute worst of them yet?
It's absolutely incredible.
She's a terribly unintelligent person, and I mean that. I don't even mean
No.
it's nothing more than she's just not. She doesn't seem to be very bright.
You can go to my Twitter feed. There were a couple yesterday about there was one answer, I think it was with Weijia Zhang of CBS, where her answer, I transcribed some of it. It was, I just made absolutely no sense. It was a lot. I had to use a lot of dashes and a lot of copy and pasting.
You physically typed this stuff out.
Yeah, we have a little bit of closed captioning, but you have to clean it up a little bit. And what's weird about it, people should remember, she's had a long career in television before this as a TV pundit. She'd be on Morning Joe, where those Morning Joe segments are like 20 minutes on the set. So you have to carry your weight. You're on a panel with Chris Matthews, who's constantly interrupting you all the time, and you have to be able to defend your points. She was with MoveOn.org, she was with MSNBC, so the fact that she then came to the White House press briefing room and has struggled the way that she has, you would think, this woman has never been on TV, never done a radio appearance in her entire life. It's absolutely stunning how terrible she's been. And it just makes that, yes, you may have disliked Jen Psaki, and she was dishonest, and she definitely didn't answer questions more often than not, but she at least gave you something to fill your copy with. And it was in complete sentences. Yes. It was a coherent thought, even if she was talking about something completely different than what you asked her.
Curtis Houck is with us. He is the managing editor at NewsBusters. You can follow him, by the way, on Twitter at Curtis, Houck. Curtis Houck on Twitter. What is the, would you say in your career now, when you guys clip something or find something, sometimes you'll find a nugget that maybe most everyone else doesn't see, and then it goes viral and it becomes synonymous with someone. Do you have an example? Maybe your biggest, I don't know if you want to say that kind of the most explosive clip you've ever dug up or found out there?
I'd have to think about what I've done, because I just do so many, but one of the biggest ones last year for NewsBusters was our Jorge Bonilla knew that Jill Biden speaking at this major left-wing Hispanic group in San Antonio.
Yes.
So when she talked about the Bogotas and the breakfast tacos.
That was you guys that found the breakfast tacos.
Yeah, that was us that found this. And and it's one of those things that you just hear it and you're like, oh my gosh, I just literally struck gold.
No one would, and by the way, no legacy media would ever allow that even be published or air, right? They just wouldn't. If they recorded it, they would dump it. Like, it would never make air. No one would hear that if it weren't for you guys.
And because it went viral, they were forced to cover it.
Yes.
We see that all the time. They wouldn't tell us that we have an impact, but they do. The media they left East Palestine, Ohio, after government officials said, "Oh, it's safe to go home, everybody." And we called that out, and then sure enough, the next news cycle, they were back with correspondents on the ground.
Yes.
We can't say directly that we had an impact, but, I mean, cause and effect. I mean, you tell me.
Curtis Houck, great work at NewsBusters. We are so grateful for your contributions to the ether out there and all that you do. If you just want a great site, and Curtis in particular, who's constantly combing through all of this and giving you the absolute best and sometimes the lowest moments of those in government, NewsBusters is where it's at. Yeah. Curtis, thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Chris.
It really is the best night's sleep I've had in I don't know how long. MyPillow.com. I don't know if you've gone to the website yet and shopped all that Mike Lindell has, but let me tell you something. He has a lot. It's not just the pillow, although there is a brand new MyPillow 2.0 that you really have to check out. And that's really what he wants me to talk to you about, that you can actually get a MyPillow 2.0. You can get it for free if you use my name when you check out. Go to MyPillow.com and click on the radio listener square and then type Chris Podcast, okay? Chris Podcast. And that's how you get a second MyPillow 2.0 for free when you order one. The cool thing about this one, if you're already familiar with MyPillow products and you say, how do you improve on a pillow? It's the temperature regulating technology that they've introduced into it. I've been sleeping on it for the last couple of weeks. It is remarkably cool to the touch. You never get hot. If you're somebody that sleeps hot, this pillow keeps you cool all night long. Core body temperature is huge in how well you sleep. So, I've got this MyPillow 2.0. I got the Giza Dream Sheets. I got the full MyPillow body pillow. I'm sleeping like a baby. So's my dog Dean, by the way. Dean has his own MyPillow dog bed. We sip on the My Coffee. Mike has his own line of coffee. Christine has her MyPillow slippers. We're MyPillowed up, my friends, and I can tell you it's high-quality stuff. In fact, MyPillow is so confident you're going to love all their products. You know, some people say, okay, look, maybe it's a couple bucks more. Maybe it is. But do you like cheaply made stuff from China? Okay, fine. Or do you like an American-made product that is 10-year warranted and has a 60-day money-back guarantee? Listen, I'm just of the mindset that I like quality. I like American-made quality, and Mike offers you both. And a guarantee you're going to be happy, and if you're not, you can send it back and get a full refund. So what's wrong with that? Plus, you'll save up to 66%, again, if you use my name, Chris Podcast, when you check out. Go to MyPillow.com or call 800-932-5056. 800-932-5056 or MyPillow.com. Well, here we are at CPAC Media Row, day 1 of 2, and it's just a veritable buffet of conservative thought here. It's just a who's who. It's a thrill, always, to talk with the guy who now chairs the House Freedom Caucus. If you like a conservative, rock-ribbed baseline of operation, it's the House Freedom Caucus. You know Andy Biggs, we talked to him for years on the show, and now I'm proud to say that a friend of ours in Pennsylvania is now the chair of the House Freedom Caucus. His name is Scott Perry, and he joins us today here on Media Row. Hi, Scott.
It's great to be with you, and it's great to be with you at CPAC.
Yeah, this is, for what you guys do, the issues that you care about in the Freedom Caucus,
it doesn't get closer to home than right here with this crowd, right? They love you.
Especially, and it's great to have you here. Look, one of the things that we've seen over the course of the last few years is the silencing of voices, and the literally you can't have your thoughts. They're not amplified anywhere, and so you literally feel isolated. You feel like you're the only person that thinks this, and then you come to a place like this, which is why it's so important. And we talk to somebody like you, and we're like, oh, wait a minute. I'm not the only one that thinks that men should be men and that, that inflation actually is happening, or that, the Keystone Pipeline was shut down on day. Like, I'm not crazy.
No, yeah. And do you hear, when you come here, do you hear from... not your constituents, but I'm just saying these are people from all over the country who are conservatives first. Do you ever learn anything when you come away like, oh, well, maybe they're keyed in on something that I didn't see in Congress?
Well, we're pretty close. Look, I spend a lot of time out of Washington, D.C. every chance I get, and I get with real people that are living in the real world. So, but this is a validation of things, and you might hear things a little more acutely here. People come from across the country, so something that you might not hear as much at home in Pennsylvania, you might hear it here because it's affecting people that come here and they want to see something done about it, and they want to know if they're the only ones that are concerned about it. So you'll hear a different amplification here, but it's a lot of the same issues.
The House Freedom Caucus made a lot of news because many of the members were part of the initial kerfuffle in landing on a speaker. Now we do have a speaker, Kevin McCarthy. Are you all satisfied as a caucus so far in the performance from leadership and where the committees are going?
So far, Kevin has done what we've asked him and what he's agreed to, so we're invigorated by that. We're encouraged by that. But look, freedom, as it has been said, takes eternal vigilance. So none of us, every day, we all have to withstand scrutiny. We have to earn our way, whether it's in private business or in the elected arena. And so we keep watching, and we're going to make sure that he stays on track because the Republic requires that from us and from him. So we didn't do all that for no reason, and we didn't do all that to just say, okay, here are the keys to the car, you can just take it out, and we're going to go sit in the backyard. That's not, we're going to be watching every step of the way, and we're going to be putting input every step of the way. What we did was give the speaker the tools to be the most powerful and productive and successful speaker in modern times. But he's still got to pick them up and use them. And we have to strengthen his resolve to do that, because in the past, those tools might have been there. Quite honestly, everybody should have been fighting for those tools. And it hasn't happened. So I'm not sure it's quite a natural occurrence, or it's, where each one of us would come down naturally without any anybody helping us there. So we're always watching, and we're going to continue to watch. The next thing we have coming is the debt ceiling.
Right.
And we're not just going to walk. Joe Biden is not going to run the table on that, and neither is Mitch McConnell or Chuck Schumer. The House is going to be involved in a big way.
That was my question. Has the Biden White House shown any, if you want to call it humility or willingness to say, okay, Republicans, you run the House, we clearly have to listen? Or no, is it not there at all?
As it initially started, so let's put this in context. In December of last year, the Democrats, with some help of some Republicans in the Senate, voted for a $1.7 trillion huge behemoth bill that was unpaid for. And then literally days later, Janet Yellen, the Secretary of the Treasury, came out and said, we're out of money, right? We're going to hit a debt crisis. And then the president came out and said, well, you got to pay this bill, and I'm not negotiating. Now, since that time, he has met with Speaker McCarthy one time. So to me, that means he's negotiating, but he said he was going to meet again, and he hasn't met again at this point. They're not going to get just, we understand that we're not going to default on the full faith and credit of the United States of America. This is the bill they ran up, and they expect us to pay it. We understand that we're going to have to pay the bill, but we're not going to do it for free. Right? They're going to have to give some things, and the biggest thing is to change the trajectory in spending. Pre-COVID, we were spending about $4.5 trillion a year, which we don't take in $4.5 trillion. Right now, revenues are the highest they've ever been in history, and we're spending $6.5 trillion, and we don't have the money for it, and they want to keep on spending $6.5 trillion. That ain't going to happen.
Scott Perry is with us. He's chair of the House Freedom Caucus. He comes from Pennsylvania's 10th Congressional District. But as chair of the Freedom Caucus, are all of you pretty much in uniform agreement on issues, or do you find that there's much division in terms of whatever the issue may be, budget or Ukraine or pick it.
Look, Republicans in the Freedom Caucus are still Republicans, which means we don't walk and march in lockstep with our leader. We have independent opinions and thoughts, and we come to them different ways. We represent different areas, and most importantly, we allow in the Republican Party our members to have their own thoughts and their own positions, and don't punish them for them. But what we do often is work towards a consensus where you can't get everything you want, but I can be for something if it moves the ball forward, and that's what we continue to work on, and we know that we have an outsized amount of power if we stick together in the Freedom Caucus, because we only have 4 or 5 votes to spare, and so if those in this Freedom Caucus can stick together, we can kind of move the agenda in the direction that most of the American people want it to go.
I don't think he's a bad guy, so I don't want to frame this as though I'm pitting you against a colleague of yours, but I'm interested in a guy like Mike McCall, who has been pretty clear on Sunday shows and in his conversations about Ukraine, full steam ahead, with, it seems almost kind of uniformly, like with Biden, whatever it takes, as long as it takes, green light everything that Ukraine needs. I can't imagine that most of your caucus feels that way, though. I don't know how you feel about it, but how do you square that circle? Again, I don't think he's a bad man, but I don't. Yeah,
we don't make any of this personal, because that makes it difficult. But we have our own viewpoints, and I have mine as well. I don't think the president, quite honestly, I don't think anybody's made a case to the American people about what our national security interests are in that region of the world that demands over $100 billion in spending that's generally unaccountable. And quite honestly, things don't add up. And so we're right to have questions. It doesn't seem right to me, as a guy who worked in plumbing and mechanical contracting, if you own a pipeline and you want to shut it off, you just turn the valve. You don't blow it up. That doesn't make any sense. So things aren't adding up to me, and we're wondering if this president, has got a problem with Putin personally, or if he's got a problem in Ukraine that he needs to cover up. Look, we want to do what's right for America and the American people, and for the cause of freedom around the globe. But there's only so much of us to go around, and we have our own problems in the United States of America. And why are we so interested in securing Ukraine's border, but so disinterested in securing our own? We got to square those issues and those questions. And until we do, I don't think that we're all going to be on the same page there.
What did you read, Scott Perry, on the news this week that virtually every government agency that counts, that's supposed to study this sort of thing, FBI, CIA, and now even the Department of Energy, and I think a couple of others, have all said definitively now, without a shadow of a doubt, the lab in Wuhan was where this virus came from. But the White House won't commit to saying so. Yeah. How do you read that?
Well, look, I read that as they've been lying to us for a long time. I was one of the people that early at the start of the pandemic, I went out publicly and said this came from the Wuhan lab. It should be called the Wuhan virus. And because every single indicator we had pointed to that, and 0 indicators pointed to anywhere else. I had the Deputy Secretary of State in a hearing this week, and I asked him what proof he had. And he could provide no proof. The only thing he could provide is that there are differences of opinion on it. Well, that's interesting, because the organization, the Department of State that speaks for the United States and all its citizens internationally, disparaged the American citizens who had a different viewpoint and marginalized them and made their opinions kind of irrelevant, so to speak. As an official policy, and I asked for an apology from him for doing that. Essentially, the federal government lied to America, lied to the world, and took the Communist Party of China's line on how this happened. It is unacceptable. And so what it goes is, if you're not willing to apologize for your faults, especially when they impact so many people that were scared and that were making decisions based on it, couldn't work maybe, or couldn't open their business because of it. It's really damaging to the trust that the American people have in our governmental institutions. And the only way to start redemption is to admit you're wrong, and they refuse to do it. And the administration shows that that's where they're going to be on the thing.
You have a lot cooking, and I know I'll let you go on this, but in terms of the House hearings that have been going on, there are several subjects, some on deck, some to come, some ongoing. Do you list them in priority, or are you kind of a lot of boiling pots all at once?
There's a lot of boiling pots, but I think the House is really going to have to focus on a couple different things, because we have a limited amount of time. There's always a limited amount of resources, and so we're really going to have to focus on a few things. I think the origins of the Wuhan virus, or we lost over a million Americans, 6.5 million people internationally to COVID. We need to know the truth about that. We need to know the truth about the president, and is he compromised by deals with China or other foreign governments? And then we need to know the truth about whether our government is collaborating with outside actors, big tech generally speaking, to silence American voices. And we can...
That's a lot.
Yeah, that is a lot. And we still need to deal with the border crime, generally speaking, fentanyl, all those things. But we're going to have to focus on a few things and get some answers. We don't have the White House, so there's probably not going to be convictions. But we need to show the American people, if they give us control of the White House and the legislature, that there's going to be accountability. We have a limited amount of time to do that, and we have to focus on some of these things.
I tell you, your colleagues in the Senate put on a clinic with Merrick Garland yesterday.
Yeah, it was awesome.
Didn't they? That was fantastic,
awesome, right?
Yeah, love that. Scott Perry, chair of the House Freedom Caucus from Pennsylvania's 10th Congressional District. It is always a pleasure. It's great to see you in person, sir.
Thank you, sir. It's great to see you. God bless you.
Larry O'Connor now brings a television screen to CPAC with his face on it. It's so obnoxious. I mean, it's just like... every year it's just a little more Larry than the last. We're live at CPAC on Media Row. We're next door to all our great radio friends. Tony Katz, our great friend from our brother from another mother in the Midwest, swatting me away. And Hons Van Spakofsky, my favorite name in all of broadcast and all of media, joins us live on Media Row. Hans, it's great to see you in person.
Well, Chris, it's nice to see you. It's a good thing I was here. I had to keep you and O'Connor from getting into fisticuffs.
Yeah,
here, right?
Well, it's the Beltway stuff. Every year it's just a little worse with him. Every year, you do election law as a field of study, and I think there's probably no bigger mess on our hands right. Well, maybe that's too tall a statement.
We have a lot of messes.
There's a lot of mess, but it's. I would say giving the nation a run for its money is election. The current state of elections in Pennsylvania.
Well, yeah, I have to admit, there's a lot of things going on in Pennsylvania that shouldn't be happening. But
is it the worst? How about that? Arizona worse?
No, the worst states of the country are New York, California, Nevada, and the reason is that those are states where, for example, in California, New York, you don't have to show any kind of ID to go vote. They allow, California allows vote harvesting, they call it. It's vote trafficking by third-party strangers and others. They mail out ballots to all their voters. I mean, it's just one thing after another.
I stipulate all that, but here's the thing. Republicans seem to be figuring out how to play that game and win in New York and California.
Well,
that doesn't make the system good, I understand, but is that what we're going to have to do?
Well, what I tell folks about this is you play by the rules that exist where you are. That doesn't mean that at the same time you don't try to change them to make them better. So, look, yeah, if you're in a state like California that unfortunately allows vote trafficking, well, yeah, obviously you need to engage in that too, although obviously do it lawfully in a way that's not pressuring and coercing voters. But remember, California actually, that's a new development. They used to ban that. It's only the last couple of years that they changed the law to allow it. So, yeah, you play by those rules, but it doesn't mean you don't keep trying to convince the legislature or potentially voters in a referendum to change it back to the way it was because of all the problems it potentially causes.
Hons Van Spakofsky, by the way, is an election law reform and senior fellow at Heritage Foundation, and we've talked with you many, many years about issues of the way the law was changed in places like Pennsylvania in just 2019 to allow 50 days of early voting. It was something that Republicans, including President Trump, really rejected, just didn't want to participate in, and as such, got their clocks cleaned. It seems that Trump, I've talked with him here recently, it seems like he's ready to embrace, okay, kind of like what we were talking about, we're going to have to end up figuring out how to play this game to go out and find votes 50 days before Election Day.
Right.
Is that where Republicans are? The reality is we've just got to learn how to get better at it.
Yeah, they do. But for example, it's very interesting on early voting. I've seen some very recent polling that says that the majority of voters, they do want early voting, but they don't think it ought to be more than 2 weeks before the election. They don't approve. Voters, the majority of voters don't approve of having early voting 50 days out, 2 months out from Election Day. And I think it's common sense. It's the common sense of the public realizing you shouldn't be voting that early. You don't have complete information on the candidates. You may not even yet have seen any debates between the candidates. I mean, think about your Senate race in Pennsylvania. The majority of people had voted before that debate even occurred.
Yes.
And that's not smart.
ID does not seem to be as front and center an issue now. Now it seems to be about the harvesting and the early voting. Has the debate shifted? Because for the longest time it was all about how outrageous and racist it was to require ID. That seems to have gone away for the most part from the left. Am I wrong?
No, they're still fighting it, even though the vast majority of voters, again, the polls are consistent on this, the vast majority of voters say, of course you should show an ID. And by the way, that's a majority of everybody. Democrats, Republicans, Libertarians, black voters, white voters, Hispanic voters. And the left, I think, realizes that they've lost. They have lost on this issue, and it doesn't do them any good to try to scare voters on this. So now they are switching to trying to do things like put in rules allowing ballot harvesting, as they call it, but ballot trafficking, as I say. Now, one thing they have been fighting is what states like Florida, Georgia, and Texas did, which is they extended their voter ID laws to absentee ballots, which makes perfect sense because so many people are voting with absentee ballots.
Yeah, can you, I know we could go state by state and we don't have the time to do it, but I would love for you for a moment to explain Florida, if you could, how they do it, because people have said DeSantis, appropriately has crowed about how well they're running elections. Everybody said they're the standard now. They still allow for, I guess, lengthy early voting or absentee voting, but they count it all the same night and they get it done early.
Yeah,
how's it work?
Yeah, they process the ballots and then start counting them on Election Day.
But they allow for days of early voting, yes?
Yeah, they do. That's about 80% of the country now allows for early voting. The amount of time varies from state to state.
So we're talking about anything from a week to 2 weeks to months.
Exactly right. Yeah. And like I said, voters don't like that. They say maybe 2 weeks, and that's good. But they were so embarrassed about the 2000 election and the fight there that they made a major effort to improve things. One of the best things they've done in the last year was, they had a problem with county DAs just not being interested in investigating and prosecuting election fraud. So they now have formed a state office whose only job it is to investigate and prosecute election fraud. And for those who think it doesn't happen, we've got an election fraud database that we maintain at the Heritage Foundation. We just added 10 new proven cases of fraud. We're up to 1,422 cases.
Wow. What about deeply red states? Should voters still be on guard? Their legislatures, again, it was a Republican legislature that gave us the mess in Pennsylvania.
Yeah.
So I say often, just because you live in a red state, you shouldn't rest on your laurels that you can't get some creative Republicans that can make a mess.
That is exactly right. And for example, right now in some Republican states, you have Republican sponsors pushing the latest nutty innovation of the left, which is ranked choice voting, which is...
What is that? Can you explain that?
Oh, my gosh.
Is that too hard to explain?
It's very confusing, but basically, on Election Day, let's assume they've got 5 people running for your mayor in your town, right?
Uh-huh.
Normally, you'd go in and you'd vote for the one person you want to have win, right? In a ranked choice voting state, you have to vote for all 5 candidates. And you rank them.
Right.
Who's your first choice? Who's your second? Who's your third? Who's your fourth? Who's your fifth? If nobody gets 50% plus 1, nobody gets a majority, then whichever candidate got the least votes, that candidate is thrown out of the race, and all the voters who said that candidate who they just threw out was their first choice, you go to their second choice, and their second choice becomes their first choice, and you recount all the ballots. It's
what a nightmare.
It is. It's really confusing. It's chaotic. But
I've had people call me advocating for this, too, and I never, frankly, wanted to take the time to learn it. But what you just explained sounds insufferably crazy.
It is crazy, and the results of it are bad. It really disenfranchises voters because it's hard to understand. And look, most voters, they don't want to rank all five candidates. So they don't. If you don't rank all of the candidates and your first choice, for example, didn't make it, guess what? Your ballot just gets thrown out and is not included in later counts. In New York City last year, when they had ranked choice voting for the first time, you know how many vote tabulations they had to do? 8 different counts of the ballots before they came up with the winner. And by the end of it, they had thrown out the ballots of 140,000 voters who didn't rank all 10 of the candidates of the race.
You talk about disenfranchisement.
Yes, absolutely.
See, and that's, again, to your point, to my point, those are Republicans out there advocating for that craziness.
Yeah, it is. Now, it's mostly coming from the left, but there are Republicans also tying into it, and they're just being foolish.
So anybody who's in a red area, red community, don't just rest on your assumptions that, our elections are buttoned up, we won't have any trouble here. There's always someone new coming along, creating some new way that's supposed to be more convenient.
Right. No, that's right.
And it's never more convenient. It's always more of a mess.
Yeah, it is. And plus, look, while red states have been doing a lot to improve things, they're still not. They still haven't done everything they need to do.
Who runs the most integrity-laced elections today, do you think?
We have an election integrity scorecard on our website where people can check that out.
Okay.
We rank all the states.
At Heritage.
At Heritage. Right now, it's Tennessee is at the top, but their score is like a 83 or an 84 out of 100.
Oh, so lots of room to improve.
Lots of room to improve.
83 is your ceiling, really?
Yeah,
a B.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah. But they've done some good things to try to, for example, make it easier to maintain the accuracy of their voter list by taking people off who died and moved away.
Hons Van Spakofsky at the Heritage Foundation. He is an expert in election integrity matters. We lean on him a lot. I hope we can get things fixed. We talked again to Donald Trump last week, who said, yep, we're going to start raising money to get that early vote to happen, but we got to win elections so that we can stop it from happening. He's convinced that it's laced with cheating, and there's just no way around it. You agree? There's just no way around the cheating factor of early voting 2 months ahead of time?
I just think there's a lot of potential problems with it.
Yeah. All right. Hons, thanks for stopping by.
Sure, thanks for having me.
Appreciate you making yourself available here at CPAC.
The Chris Stigall Show podcast.